Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 148 of ReelBlend, a podcast that promises to do much better this year. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at CinemaBlend, and I am pleased to welcome you guys to the first full episode of 2021. Yay! Come on, some applause.
Why would you commit to? No, I'm terrified of this. Like, guaranteed to be. It's like, oh, that year where we got Nolan, we're gonna do better.
Spielberg. If you listen to the premium episode where we all singled out the directors or just anybody in basically who we want to get this year, we have put Spielberg on the calendar. So West Side Story, The Beard, he's coming to ReelBlend. That's what I'm calling right now.
Whether he knows it or not.
Before we move to 2021 fully, we have to look back on 2020. This is the third time, I want to say, that we're doing our top 10 lists on the show. Gabe was just going to look up. We were checking to see whether we started this show in 2017 or 2018.
I think it was the beginning of 2018 because we're only 140 something episodes in.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. All right, so we're doing our top 10 lists. We are going to talk about Pieces of a Woman, which is coming to Netflix, and we are going to discuss our favorite Chris Pine performances in the BlendGame. And by we, of course, I mean Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Sean, Jake, Gabriel, good to see you guys.
Happy New Year to you. Yes.
Happy New Year.
And to your wonderful Lauren, how are you guys doing? You guys well?
Yeah, we're doing good. How's Michelle and the kids?
Everyone's good, man. Everyone's happy and healthy and ready to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago, how are you, brother?
My dog and I are good.
Oh, Queen Daenerys. And, of course, Gabe Kovac, who is chiming in every once in a while.
How long
and
you work
will
with him?
Be significantly during the top 10 lists. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
How's it going? Glad to be back.
It's so good to be back and testing out the new digs. Let's see. We are going to be doing... I did introducing the guys. I'm letting you guys know that if you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Hopefully you by now hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so that every time we post a new interview, like the bonus ones that we ran over the holiday, where you guys got to see Pete Docter and Emerald Fennell, who talked about Promising Young Woman. Some great interviews, and because most people are letting us capture video, you guys get to watch those as well as they're happening. If you're listening to us where you get your podcast needs met, 1 second, Jake Hamilton.
I guess but it's on. Okay, all right.
There is going to be a link in the description or some information to tell you how to go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe there, because we want to. Oh, we crossed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2020, which was a personal goal that I set. Yes, Jake, what can I do for you?
Okay, so I've mentioned this in years past, and I'm curious if you guys experienced this. In a year of screeners, and obviously this year was significally different. We got significantly fewer because there were just really fewer films to really think about.
They're all from Netflix, which are the movies are
well,
on
not even just like physical screeners, like links and stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
There always seems to be one movie that people gravitate towards in terms of like whenever I bring them home for Christmas for my family to watch, or like if my girlfriend comes over and wants to watch one. And every year I'm always curious, and it's never like the big one you think it's gonna be. It's like kind of a middle tier where you're like, really? Like you all want to watch that individually? For me this year, I have now watched Promising Young Woman like 6 times because everyone seems to like have heard just enough about it to want to watch. Yeah. Like that's the movie. And I was like, you guys know, like I got News of the World. I got this. Like, no, I want to see Promising Young. And I'm like, and not that I don't like it, as you'll see, it is somewhere on my top 10 list. But like by like time 5, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this again.
That's a lot of times to watch any movie.
Sure.
And that movie in particular. Yeah. Because it can be, especially once the surprises have played out of it. But it's probably fun for you to watch it and see other people's reactions.
Yeah, there are certain beats that I do watch kind of like in my peripheral vision, more so like, I was telling you guys, it's so great. And Kevin, I know you've probably experienced this too, I watched Tenet with Amanda just a couple of days ago, and just from my side eye watching the wheel, like her initial confusion when he gets sucked back into the Freeport, and that moment of like, wait, I've already seen this scene. Why is he, wait, and you can see the wheel, and then you just see it click. Oh, that's so great to see someone else experience that moment and just how she went. Oh, it's so great.
Yeah, I love that moment. I mean, I have people over the house all the time. Not all the time, but when I do have people over the house, I put on Tenet.
Has Tenet passed Dunkirk for views?
Views?
Yes.
I mean, I watched Dunkirk the other day and Tenet the other day.
On VHS?
No, on Blu-ray. No, Jake did send me the VHS for Tenet, which I need to play, or for Dunkirk. But no, but yeah,
it's my understanding that they do actually play. If you put them in a VCR, from my understanding, the
I have a
movie is on
VCR.
there.
I need to put it in. I want to see it.
I tried to take mine out of the box, and it felt like it was stuck or sticking, so I thought it was like a gimmick, and I just left it alone.
No, dude, the VHS tape has
It comes
like
out.
a little sticker on it. Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. I don't even have a DVD player anymore because Brendan took the PlayStation 4 into his room, and that was our DVD player. So I was actually going to invest in a cheap DVD player just so I can watch stuff that I want to watch downstairs, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that.
Do they still make like the dual ones, like the DVD VCR, or is VCR just totally dead?
I totally dead is probably accurate for VCR.
Damn.
I mean, you could probably find one.
Sean, what was your VHS? What movie did you get from Jake?
Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Nice.
And it's so Jake, to let everybody in on the story, Jake gave us Christmas gifts, and they were these VHS copies of movies that were specifically aimed at us. And this artist, I don't know why I'm describing it, Jake, you should probably talk about it since you found them. This guy makes these what look to be retro copies of modern day films. And so Kevin got Dunkirk, I got Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Gabe got
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
The thing that I liked about him is that he purposefully, the guy that I found that makes these, he's on Instagram. I can't find his handle right now. I'll find it and get it to you guys later so we can pimp him out a little bit. There are certain titles he chooses and says like, hey, if you want one, here's how much it costs, and I'll send it to you. But also he takes requests, charges a little bit more, but he takes specific requests. In fact, he liked so much how Homecoming came out that he ended up making that like I think the tape for January. But what I like that he does is not only does he take modern movies and make VHSs out of them, he like fades them in such a way and kind of like grunges them up so as to look that like they've been on the shelf for a while. So it kind of looks like they've like been not, like at an old video store for like the last 15 years and no one's picked it up.
Believe me, I spent so much time pointing that out to Michelle that like every 10 minutes of me like mentioning all the creases and the fading, she gave me a look that was basically like, I get it.
It's old.
Yeah, it looks old. I understand. Shut up. Don't on the show, because I don't want to, don't reveal what I gave you guys for Christmas. It's
almost as good as what everyone else got me.
This was a year where I couldn't get motivated to do much of anything, which was really sad.
I can't wait to see what you guys give me for my birthday.
Yeah, Jake gave this really thoughtful Christmas gift, and I said nothing.
It's okay. I got back the greatest gift of all, which is the knowledge that I should never do it again.
No, friendship. You got friendship. That's what this whole podcast is.
Can I trade that in for something?
I always remember Jake's birthday because it's the same birthday as the lead singer of Korn, Jonathan Davis.
And Jonathan Davis actually says that his birthday is Jake Hamilton's birthday.
He does.
So
he sang it in one of the first albums. Yeah.
And Kevin Costner goes like, "What the hell about me?"
Weekly poll. So the weekly poll last week was, which one did you like more, Wonder Woman or Wonder Woman 1984? Now, not which one is better, but which one did you like more? And one of them was a runaway smash hit. And so someone suggested underneath, and this is what we will end up doing. Since it seems very clear that the first Wonder Woman would win this poll, which I thought it would be closer, to be honest with you, it did win. It dominated. But Jake, try to guess which percentage of the votes Wonder Woman got over Wonder Woman 1984.
I'm going to say 75-25.
85-14.
Damn.
Yeah, so, 85% of the poll went with the original one. And I don't think that's... Listen, I understand that the first Wonder Woman is beloved. Everybody thinks that Patty did a wonderful job. This was the introduction Diana got introduced in BVS, but this was her first true feature-length origin story. We all came out of Wonder Woman 1984 thinking it was a really good movie.
I liked it quite a bit.
Then it seemed that second wave of reviews came Can we talk about the second wave of reviews for a number of these films?
Sure.
Because I don't know if they are accurate. I think a lot of people, and Jake, I think you have this opinion too, Kev. I'm not sure if you weighed in on this yet. For movies like Wonder Woman 1984, for movies like Tenet, I'm starting to see reactions that skew far more negatively in the second wave than the people who initially see it. And I'm not going to go out fully on the limb and say that the initial reviews are super positive and the latest ones are intentionally negative, but I find it really strange that the movie doesn't change. So how come a group of people who watch it can think one way about it, specifically Tenet, and then, the next group of people that see it later think that it's a piece of crap? Like, I don't understand that. It seems too weird to have happened to both Tenet and then to Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of expressed how I felt in our text thread, and not to call people out specifically, but I think my issue came with the fact that it felt like, and this is not like unique to COVID times. This is normally how things work, which is that people that attend or participate in the press junket tend to see a movie first. And then there is a second wave of press screenings for people who just need to cover it. That's, correct me if I'm wrong, like that's the order that it normally goes in. But it really seemed like, both with Tenet and with Wonder Woman, if you weren't in that first wave of people that saw it, I noticed a lot of like really upset reactions, like guess I'm just not going to get to see Tenet. Guess I'm just not going to get to see Wonder Woman. And then those people would turn around and do two things that one of which upsets me. One, accuse the people that saw it first of giving it good reviews because of access, which I don't know about. Like I've done a lot of junkets where I didn't like the movie, especially during COVID times. And then the latter is then after bitching about not getting to see it early, just not just disliking, but just trashing it beyond repute. And it's just like, it really, like, in my knee-jerk, if they're allowed to say, well, they gave it a good review because they did the junket, then my knee-jerk reaction is to say, I think you're ripping it apart because you weren't in the first wave of participation and you can't stand the idea of not being a part of something that's good. So because you missed out on that initial wave, you want to tear it down, make it seem bad, therefore it doesn't really seem like you missed out on something that was good.
Kev, did you see this with Tenet specifically?
Yeah, I've really, especially with the Wonder Woman 84 discourse, it's just really disheartening for me as a film fan. I don't really like where we are as a society with films now. Just from a general perspective of the way everybody is just so negative. And a film can be bad, that's fine. Wonder Woman 1984 I liked, but it did have flaws. We're too judgmental. We're too up on our high horse. I'm talking about we as a society, not just in general. I feel like the discourse surrounding cinema film Twitter is just, it's like some of that stuff just really depresses me, to be honest with you. And I know there are so many films over the years that have come out that were classics that weren't received well back in the day. But, it's funny because I was watching News of the World recently, and I thought to myself, how cool would that be to not be continuously knowing everything that's happening, but then you just then you sit down and actually get the news. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was looking at those people. There's a scene in the beginning of News of the World where Hanks is just like, delivering the news of the world, literally from the newspaper. And again, I know technology, we're in different times, but there was something kind of interesting about these people living their lives on their own without, and kind of like same thing with movies. It was
like when we used to see trailers. Remember when we used to you didn't know a movie was coming out till you went to the movies and saw the trailer for it, and you're like, what? Like Die Hard 2? Yeah. Die Harder?
Yeah. The discourse has just gotten, people are already hating on films before they even see them, and it's just
rest in peace, Snyder Cut.
Yeah, it's an unreal thing. And don't get me wrong, Twitter and social media have very positives in the sense of like connecting people, and I love that when a movie can be championed, that it can carry weight across social media and get a lot of people talking about it, and that's kind of the universality of what the communal movie experience is. So since we're not together now, we can kind of be together on social media. But I'll tell you right now, Wonder Woman 84 discourse really hurt me personally. Just from an emotional standpoint, I'm like, are we really at a point where people are just going to be people love trashing stuff now? It's like like the new thing is to be as negative as possible. Have the hottest take you possibly can. There's no middle ground anymore. It's worst movie ever or best movie ever. There's no middle ground. And I feel like that's really a shame that we've gotten to that point.
One thing that I found really confusing and hard to reconcile with, specifically with the Wonder Woman 84 discourse, was for years now, a larger criticism for superhero movies has been that they're starting to take themselves too seriously.
I saw this, yeah.
And that's I think that's a fair criticism, especially post Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan era, which took itself very seriously.
Right.
That's a fair criticism that they're starting to get a little bit too away from these are superheroes made for
grounded and gritty, right?
Yeah,
like
not even just grounded and gritty, but a superhero can be these sort of broad stroke good versus bad and still be kind of fun. Let's just it's for a kid to kind of enjoy a character and get a sense of the world around them in a protected space. People lose sight of that, I think, and that's a fair criticism. But then a movie like Wonder Woman 1984 comes out, which is very playful and is very fun, and while it touches on some serious things, it doesn't it's not like this is the whole movie. Spoiler alert, you care about the villain and the villain doesn't die at the end. Like that's a really not taking itself too seriously movie, and the
other one turns into a cheetah.
Yeah, well, and then the criticisms of this movie, broadly speaking, the criticisms are they didn't take the fun stuff that they were doing seriously enough to care about the optics of it, or it was just such a wow. And I can't go as far as saying it's the same people saying two different things, but it's just so confusing to be like, well, if the overwhelming criticism is that they take themselves too seriously, and then we get a really fun movie, but it didn't take itself seriously enough, I was confused for days. I was like, I don't know. What really bothered me was
Well, what really bothered me was I went on the air and I gave my review for the film, and I'll summarize it by saying I gave negative and positive points to it. I said it was a little too long. I thought it was a little bit heavy-handed from a script standpoint. I thought that some of the dialogue was not great. I thought the plot was like a liar liar Aladdin meets Wonder Woman kind of thing. But on the positive side, I thought Gal Gadot and Pine were great. I love Pedro Pascal. I think his arc is brilliant. I loved Kristen Wiig. I thought it was shot gorgeously. I thought the Cairo action scene was amazing. And so I had all these positives and positive points, and then there were negative points. And then everybody comes after me like, that was the worst movie of all time. I'm never trusting your opinion ever again. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? Did you not listen to my review, or did you just look at the star rating?
If that's the worst movie you've ever seen, then what have you seen 8 movies in your life? You need to see more movies if that's the worst movie.
To be fair, though, some people
people
only see 3 or 4 movies a year, and they're usually these superhero movies.
But did you see Suicide Squad? Did you see Aquaman? I mean, come on, those are. I mean, no offense, I know you guys like Aquaman, but Aquaman and Suicide Squad are so much worse than anything in Wonder Woman 1984, in my personal opinion. But I also feel like Patty Jenkins, that movie had a lot of heart to it. I actually found it to be really heartwarming that a villain had that arc that he did, that he realized. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought Pascal was crazy brilliant. I remember texting Sean after I saw it. I was like, I thought Pascal was the star of the movie, essentially.
He has the best arc in the whole movie.
It's his movie, right?
Yeah, it's his movie. It really is.
Again, I don't think any of us right here would say that Wonder Woman 1984 is the greatest movie ever made. Mm-hmm. I've just found the discourse surrounding this film to be absurd to a point where it really saddened me that we have gotten to the state. It makes me so sad.
But wait, Kevin brings up a point that I want to touch on before we eventually move on from this too, is the reaction is also, it's not just about the movies in general, but someone will say to Kevin or to Jake or to myself, that I'm not going to trust you anymore because of your one opinion to this movie that I disagree with.
That's how I felt, honestly. I've given hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reviews my entire career, and I've had people tweet me that this was the one for them. That we're done. I'm like,
I think people overestimate how much I care.
I mean, it's just I'm just why would you even make the time to write me something like that?
I think that's a misuse of what you guys provide, people, like what we're providing, like what conversation provides. Like I talk to you guys for at least 2 hours a week like this, at least. We text all the time. I have a really, really great understanding, and I think our audience, because they're a part of those conversations, the ones that, catch everything, I have a really good understanding of Jake's taste in movies and what he likes, what he doesn't like, and why he likes them. Kevin and Sean, all the same. Yeah. So when Sean says, I love this movie and this is why, because I've had this conversation with you, I know, I have a better idea of, am I going to agree with him or not? Like that's you're not supposed to just, this is the one person that I always agree with, because that person doesn't exist.
Sure.
It's a relationship that you build over years of hearing their opinion and not just looking at the star rating. So it's...
What I found this interesting. I know we'll move on, but I was looking up after the Wonder Woman discourse and Tenet discourse, whatever. I was just looking up like classic films. Not that I'm saying Wonder Woman is anywhere near these movies I'm about to mention, but I was looking up like old reviews for like 2001: Space Odyssey, and like people just destroyed that film. And I thought to myself, could you imagine if 2001 came out during Twitter? That would have been it would have been awful. Like everybody, because 2001 is a film that requires multiple viewings. Another thing with the Twitter discourse on Tenet, for example, everyone's like, "Oh, I don't want to watch a movie more than once. If I'm confused by it, then I hated it." I'm like, okay, that's your personal opinion, but I'm telling you that you should give it another chance or whatever. Yeah. And so it just saddens me. And I think that's why a lot of these filmmakers that we love, you'll notice them, none of them are on Twitter.
Right.
Nolan, Spielberg, Denis, like all these, none of them are really on Twitter. Yeah, they're not really on there.
There's no point
they stay away from it.
Yeah, there's really honestly no point. It is discouraging. Because when you look back on last year, that people will try to slam it as saying that like this is a year that nothing good came out. But as we're about to celebrate, like there were clearly fantastic films.
What a ridiculous statement someone would make that last year was a bad year for movies. I actually thought there were I watched 4 films between our last conversation and now that we're going to get into today, like News of the World, Minari. I just found so many wonderful films and stories from last year.
All right, so let's get into our top 10 then, because this is a fun episode that we always enjoy putting on, where we're going to single out our individual lists, and at the end of it, Gabe is going to read what is collectively going to be known as the ReelBlend Top 5, based on points that we have accumulated for the movies that we have listed. But before we get into this, we want to shine a little bit of a spotlight on a discussion that we've been having off and on in our text chain about what honestly qualifies as a 2020 film, and whether, Jake, you've had a really a bug up your ass about like what qualifies.
Sure.
So I'm going to let you take the baton on this one.
Look, the rules normally are and kind of go by sort of the Oscar rules. That's kind of what I've always done, which is like maybe a movie doesn't open wide until January, but if it opened in like 2 theaters in LA and New York on Christmas Day, that counts. Like if normal people like without early access to screenings had access to go see it, even if it's just 2 screenings, then that counts. There are a lot of movies that are very much going to be leaders of the pack when it comes to the Oscar race that don't fall under that umbrella for the year of 2020. Mm-hmm. They might have been at a film festival and we might have gotten screener links to them, but they didn't actually come out anywhere for the average movie going public to see.
Or and they in fact like grabbed a February release
exactly
date because the Academy switched their qualifications.
And I just really have a tough time saying that no matter what IMDb says or when a movie came out at a film festival, because keep in mind, if we're using the film festival rule, Sound of Metal came out at TIFF in 2019. So I just have, can I call a movie one of the best of the year when in fact, unless you had some sort of certain privilege, you couldn't see it last year?
So I, in the text thread, have been doing a lot of the arguing with Jake that if I managed to see a movie specifically at a film festival this year, that I was considering it for my top 10 list. And one of the films in particular was Minari, which has been playing a lot of film festivals. has been in consideration for people's top 10 lists, but took a February date. I will say that when putting my top 10 list together, I waffled and I have moved the 2021 movies to 2021
Yes!
list. So, but it allowed me then to include a couple of movies, one or two movies,
Right.
that made it onto the list because I think that they should be celebrated as 2020 films.
And that was sort of you talk about the bug up my ass. It felt like a lot of critics were doing the opposite of that, so as to stack their top 10 and have their top 10 be a collection of the Oscar favorites and also like low-key humble brags of like, look what I've already seen. In fact,
what I will say is a movie like Nomadland, or even a movie like Minari, I think that their intention, now here we can argue intention. I think their intention was absolutely going to be to come out before the end of the year if the Oscar race was the Oscar race. They played early film festivals, they generated buzz, and they were waiting out the coronavirus to see if theaters were going to open back up again. And so by definition, they feel like 2020 films to me.
I agree with you.
I'm going to make the case the opposite direction.
But you know, the one... Yeah,
Sorry, I just want to offer a counter to Jake's cynicism, which is not wrong, but we've been very cynical on this show, and I just want to offer a counter.
Or realism.
Well, okay, so maybe there are some reviewers out there or people who make lists who are interested in having some sort of superior...
Okay, the guy that... I'm not going to call him out.
One guy in particular.
The guy that named a movie the best film of the year... that was not just delayed from last year, but has yet to be rescheduled for 2021. Yeah. Like, that infuriated me, like, beyond, like, come on.
Okay, but let me offer a little bit of, perhaps, just as likely a bit of altruism that maybe is at stake here. Top 10 lists are very important for films. In the same way that Oscars are very important for films. There are a lot of movies that get a lot of buzz that are really critically well received that the average person to someone who sees above average amount of films a year won't see until they see it on a number of top 10 lists. So there is also, I think there's a part of some people who might say, if I don't put this on my top 10 list now, it's not going to be on my top 10 list next year. And this really good movie that I would have is going to be ignored by people.
But it didn't come out last year. I know. Okay, what if I put A Quiet Place 2 on my top 10 list?
I'm not arguing your point. I just wanted to push back on the cynicism, which you're right to have. It's probably out there. But some people maybe looking at the top 10 list as a way to really put some films that might get overlooked because of this weird...
Look, you even pissed off Daenerys.
I know.
So your 2021 list should theoretically have a 1 and 2 slot right now. Like, if a movie was supposed to be on your top 10 list, and currently it's that qualifies it as one of the best things you've seen. Sure.
And also, I mean, 3, because you could say, like, a Quiet Place Part 2.
Which I gave stars out of 5 in my review. And, I don't. The movie.
Well, Sean just broke embargo.
Who knows? Oh shit! I guess I did, didn't I? Cav, where are you on this side? I don't know if I've even heard your take on this.
It's an interesting discussion because I understand where Gabe's coming from because like top 10 lists do provide a push for certain films and like, you know, this movie's in the top 10 of the year. It's interesting because this year is so unprecedented that like films like Nomadland and Minari feel like 2020 films just based on the feeling of the discussion.
Those are the movies that were really taught for people that were like, what the hell are they? It's really those two and kind of The Father. I don't know. I haven't seen The Father yet. I don't know if you guys
would have been maybe like One Night in Miami, but that grabbed a Christmas Day release.
Sure.
Right.
So people aren't really seeing it until January, February.
Sure.
Yeah, I just watched a bunch of these in question films. Like I just watched One Night in Miami, which was fabulous, and Minari was incredible. I cannot wait to see that again. And Nomadland, and none of those are on my top 10. Not by I didn't do it by decision to keep them from the top 10. They just didn't make my top 10 of 2020. But I see both sides. I actually understand where Jake's coming from, and I understand where Gabe's coming from. I just feel like in the discussion that we're in right now, like I feel like then we would need to have seen Cherry. That would need to have been seen if we're including that far out into February and January and February. So, but I mean, for people listening that don't know what's going on with the rules, specifically, obviously the Oscars extended their deadline. Normally it's through the end of the year, and now they have a couple months extra leading into 2021 that will make films eligible for their April or March Oscars.
April.
Yeah. So there's a reason why these films are being questioned. I guess like a film like The Little Things with Denzel Washington and Rami Malek, is that considered a 2020 film?
That's 2021.
But is it for the Oscars of this year?
Oh yeah, I guess technically because it's gonna open in theaters and
January.
And, HBO Max. Yeah, like in like next week, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll say this: if Minari and Nomadland were good enough to be on my top 10, I would have put them on my top 10. I love Minari.
Really?
I love Minari, but I would have put it on there. But there were films that I thought were better.
So Kev, start with you then.
guy that put that one movie on his top.
You need to call that guy and just work it out with him.
Tell me that's not.
No, it's
like,
totally
pretentious.
No, it was very pretentious.
How did anyone watch Minari and think that's a foreign language film? By the way, I'm very confused.
Any more so than Inglourious Bastards? Like I don't understand
Babel.
how
So you're about to get into it. I'll explain to the audience kind of the formatting. You guys are going to quickly go through your 10 through 6. You'll each just kind of go through those, and then we'll sort of piece by piece, one by one, go 5 through number 1. Spend a little bit more time on those.
Kev, start us off. What is your 10 through 6?
All right, my 10 through 6. Okay, so are we doing honorable mentions or just strictly 10
We'll do that at the end. We'll just throw in some at the end.
All right, my number 10 is Bad Boys for Life.
Yes!
It made me happy. I'll give a couple sentences on each. It made me really happy as a fan. I've been a fan of the Bad Boys franchise forever, and 3 was a solid effort. And I think anybody who's a fan of Bad Boys, it gave you exactly what Bad Boys was supposed to give you. And
Bilal and Adil, man.
They were great. I was very excited about that movie. My number 9 is Palm Springs.
Nice.
Hulu, great film, very unique, very interesting, but obviously it plays with the Groundhog Day aspect. But I thought that Andy Samberg and is it Kristen Milioti were phenomenal, and I thought J.K. Simmons was fantastic as well. My number 8 is Da 5 Bloods, primarily because I think it was one of the most profound ways to ever explain PTSD. I've never seen a filmmaker capture PTSD like that, in the sense that you have the older actors playing their younger memory. And I thought that was a brilliant way to capture that. And it made me understand PTSD in a way I never understood before. My number 7, Sound of Metal, which, you know, you guys have all seen the Sound of Metal, right? Gabe, have you seen it? No, okay. Something profound happened to me during Sound of Metal that I was so blown away. Riz Ahmed is incredible. Everyone in the movie's great. But there's a point in the film where for 20 minutes or so, I was genuinely like annoyed. Like I was angry because the sound was so annoying. There's a moment where his character gets an implant, and that sound becomes your sound as the audience. And it got so frustrating as an audience member that I had to turn my volume down. But once the payoff clicks, I won't say what the payoff specifically is, I've never understood that disconnect more in my life than that. It was, I feel like that was like the definition of the sound of silence, kind of exactly what they were able to pull off of that. So that's why that ended up on number 7, because I've never seen myself jump like that. I was like, oh my God, it was like such an immersive experience. My number 6 was Promising Young Woman. Again, phenomenal film, phenomenal performance by Carey Mulligan. I just think it's brilliant what Emerald Fennell did, especially with the crucifixion image in the beginning when she's on the couch, and that whole imagery of that being an image of vulnerability and power in the same image, and kind of what that character goes on journey wise in terms of being essentially kind of like a martyr. If I would say that. But it's a brilliant piece, gorgeously shot, one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a long time, and Carey Mulligan is, I think, the best performance from an actress I saw all year.
First time filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like, that blows my mind.
I mean,
the control.
The composition of her shots were, and I know we'll get into this later, but like, just a simple, like the first shot you ever see of Carey Mulligan in that movie is her on the couch like that, and it's like, the idea of that being a crucifixion imagery of a woman who's in that moment both vulnerable and powerful, because we know exactly what she's gonna do, but she looks vulnerable. It's just it's a brilliant film. Love that movie.
All right, I'm up, and I'll go 10 through 6. And my 10, which was gonna be Minari, got bumped for Uncorked, a Netflix film. that probably speaks really closely to me personally, in that the main character wants to study to be a sommelier. I'm obsessed with wine, and so I learned more about wine in Uncorked than I ever thought I was going to learn. But I also just love chase your dream stories. And then, of course, the father wants his son to take over the barbecue business, and I'm obsessed with barbecue. And so it felt like a screenplay that was written directly for me. And so that made it to number 10. 9 was Borat, subsequent movie film. One of the only films this year that the minute it ended, I wanted to go back and rewatch it again because I couldn't comprehend everything that we had watched. And I laughed just as hard every single time that I watched it, and showed it to Michelle, and she was rolling on the floor. Like, there's jokes in that movie that I don't know how they got across. Like, everything in the abortion clinic when she swallows the plastic baby is just phenomenal. Everything with Rudy Giuliani, I mean, all of it's unbelievable. So I never thought we needed a Borat sequel. I can't believe that we got one, and I can't believe how funny it was.
I remember, didn't you say, like, when I texted, like, when news first broke, didn't you respond meh?
No.
I'm pretty sure you responded meh.
No way, dude. No way. I could not have.
Not after having seen the film, but like just when news broke that we were going to be getting this movie.
Oh, yeah. Probably. Yeah, probably. Because it's like, why bring back this dated character? I didn't understand the point. But 8 for me is Trial of the Chicago 7, which is brilliant Aaron Sorkin screenplay, tremendous ensemble. It kind of made me laugh to put Borat and Chicago 7 back to back to just show the versatility of Sacha Baron Cohen.
Quick note about that movie. Did you know? I didn't realize this, and I'm not trying to bring up Forrest Gump to piss you off. That the character that Sacha Baron Cohen plays in Chicago 7 is that moment. Do you remember when Forrest Gump is at like the pool, like in DC? What is it called? Like the
reflecting pool.
The reflecting pool. Yeah, like, and he's being introduced by someone, and he's like, "What's your name? What's your name, soldier?" And he's like, "My name's Forrest Gump." And the guy goes, "Forrest Gump," and everyone's like, "Yeah, that's the guy that Sacha Baron Cohen plays."
That's Abby Hoffman.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah,
no,
I didn't know that.
I had no idea. That's not why it made my top 10. It made my top 10 because Aaron Sorkin is a genius screenwriter, and everybody in that ensemble is phenomenal. I think Michael Keaton might steal the entire show when he shows up later. I can now talk about that because that cameo is amazing. 7 for me is One Night in Miami. I cannot believe how good of a director Regina King is.
So good.
I, in general, don't like stage plays that are filmed. I think the ones I love most are the ones that break through the concept of this is a stage play. That's a little bit what trips me up about Ma Rainey. Mm-hmm. Ma Rainey, as it plays out, still feels like they're on a stage doing it. But movies like Fences, movies like, obviously, A Few Good Men, movies like One Night in Miami, more feel cinematic and more feel like these people are actually having conversations.
Yeah. Where do you put Glengarry Glen Ross?
Oh, Glengarry Glen Ross is one of the best films ever made. Yeah. Ever made. That screenplay.
That's like top 10 monologues of all time.
Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, that cast is unbelievable.
Always Be Closing?
Amazing.
That scene's perfect. The rain in that scene is what blows my mind. Just I'm
blanking on the actor's name, but the guy who plays Cassius Clay in One Night in Miami is... that's the best Muhammad Ali I've ever seen. Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
I thought it was him. I actually thought Regina King took him somehow from the past, and I mean that performance was incredible. Like, it was honestly, everybody was great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Eli Gorey is the gentleman's name.
Thank you very much.
And I thought Leslie Odom Jr. was great. I mean, that movie is a fantastic achievement from a directing standpoint, but also performance.
But even going back and revisiting it to see, like, okay, where does this really fall? It's stunning to me. Where is this movie on any of your guys' lists?
It's not on
my. Is it higher?
No. It would be honorable mentions.
Yeah, okay. Top 15.
Yeah. Then I want to take just a second to talk about it.
Please.
The first time through, you get so enamored in the conversations in the hotel room that when I went back to revisit the movie, I didn't really comprehend how comfortable she was in the boxing ring with Cassius. In the Copacabana, when Sam Cooke is getting basically ignored by the white audience that doesn't want to see him singing there. There's a scene that, Jake, you texted me right after it happened with Jim Brown on the front porch of a a southern plantation.
Yeah.
Where he's not allowed to go into
Bo
the
Bridges?
house.
Him and Bo Bridges?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is just, it's a gut punch.
Yeah.
And it's the way that Regina King handles it.
It's the nonchalant way she delivers this scene, and we won't ruin it, but it comes out on Prime on the 15th. But that scene you're referring to, the filmmaking is so good in that scene because you almost forget the times you're living in.
Oh yeah.
For the moment of the scene. And then she like literally shoots a gun into the screen, like from a directing standpoint. That like completely, it is one of the most. That jaw dropped my mind. What a moment! Wow.
But there's a scene where Cassius is in the middle of a really important conversation, and then he stops, and all of his friends start to huddle around him, and they're like, "What's wrong, Cash? What's wrong?" And he goes, "Why am I so pretty?"
Yeah, that was a great line.
It's one of my favorite moments in that because it's such a dramatic. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I can't recognize it. So
and
that
also,
landed at number 7.
Shout out to Kemp Powers, who
Yes!
co-directed Soul, and he wrote the play that Miami's based on and the screenplay. So in 2020, I don't want to give anything away, but Sean, you have 2 Kemp Powers films on your top 10.
Yes, I do.
Do you think anyone will ever make a play about when the 4 of us were in that hotel room in Toronto? And the moment that we shall not name, we can call it One Night in Toronto.
I would love to.
Those movies don't win Oscars.
We should see if we can get Regina King on the show.
We're trying
because I also would
she
love
has
to.
a junket coming up.
Yeah, I think it's this weekend. I think
Sunday.
It's a hard hashtag if it happens though. We've gotten some not fatal news, but some bad news on that front. But we're trying.
Some indications that she might not want to do podcasts. Essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
But we're still pushing. And you know, it was really nice to push, just to give you a peek behind the curtain, when I replied back to the rep and I was like, please let her know that these are the last few directors. Like, we're a filmmaker podcast, and these are the last few names that we spoke to. And it was a really comfortable list. I was really happy to be able to send that email of saying, like, she might want to join this company because we would love to have her. And we would obviously
that was the podcast equivalent of Ron Burgundy's We're Kind of a Big Deal.
Yes. At number 6, I put Da 5 Bloods. And this is weird because I gave Da 5 Bloods 5 stars. I still think it's a 5-star film. There are movies on my list in the top 5 that I gave 4.5 stars to. I think Da 5 Bloods is incredibly well made and incredibly well acted, but the rewatch factor is what knocked it out of the top 5 for me. It's not a movie that I'm just going to sit down and plunk on. While I think it's probably one of Spike's best, it's a really tough film to get through. It's heavy. It asks a lot of really important questions. It makes amazing connections to Black Lives Movement, the Black Lives Matter movement of today, and sort of goes to show that like history repeats itself and some things don't actually change. And those are tough lessons. But the movies that make my top 5 had more of a repeat entertainment value. But I don't want it to diminish how important I think Da 5 Bloods was. What annoyed me about my list before I throw it to Jake is that Jake brought up a movie that's going to be in my top 5 that when I forgot it and had to include it, it bumped everything down. And I had some really good symmetry going on where Da 5 Bloods was 5 and The Trial of the Chicago 7 was 7. And it moved them all down one slot. And now my list is
what did I bring up?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you when we get to it. So,
all right, my 10 through 6 looks a little different than y'all's, which I think is kind of exciting. My number 10 is Host. I think in 50, I think it's far and away the scariest film of 2020. I think it packs in more fear in 57 minutes. It's only 57 minutes long than most movies do, not just in 2 hours, but over a 10 film series. I think there's a reason that, you guys know I was a big champion of this film right when it came out, and it really made me happy that Blumhouse just signed on the director for a 3-picture deal based on what they saw. I mean, the fact that he was able to pull this movie off over quarantine. Like, he had, not only did he direct his actors over Zoom, like what we're doing right now, he had to come up with a way for them to practically do things and then instruct them on how to do it. Okay, here's how we're going to pull your chair across the room, but I need you to get this rope and I need you to do, to me, that's genius. My number 9 is The Vast of Night. A movie that we had the director on our podcast, so go back and look for that. Kind of the antithesis to most alien movies. You know, we don't see A-list stars punching extraterrestrials. We don't see national monuments blown up. Instead, it's a very quiet, personal story about a small New Mexico town in the 1950s and what happens when they start hearing a sound. Absolutely loved it. Number 8 is a movie that I still have not shaken. A movie called The Lodge. A thrilling, like unsettling film about two kids who have to spend time alone in a cabin with their soon-to-be stepmother. Things start getting weird, and it may or may not have to do with the fact that their soon-to-be stepmother is the last surviving member of a religious cult. And it is a hell of a movie with what might be my favorite ending of the year.
You set that movie up for me, and I didn't like it.
I loved it. I loved it. My number 7 is a movie that I think we are going to be hearing more people enjoy as they discover it in the coming weeks, months, and years. As I think we all did, is my number 7 is The Kid Detective. Modern day film noir. I think we would have seen more people react to it if just more people had access to it. I wish Sony had put it out on VOD when they put it in theaters, because I think it would have made a bigger splash. But I think it comes out on DVD and PVOD soon. And then my number 6 is Soul, which I think we're probably going to get into it's an animated existential crisis. The best summary I've seen is, I think someone posted a meme that was like, remember 25 years ago when Pixar was, hey, wouldn't it be fun if toys talked? And now it's like, what the hell are you doing with your life? You are going to die one day. Make something of yourself, for God's sake. And I think that's entirely accurate. So yeah, that's my 10 through 6.
I think a metaphor for that you accidentally made in the interview, I think Jake made it, because you said, oh, back in the 90s you couldn't make feet, and now you're making the afterlife. It's like a metaphor for
that's
how
a
far
wonderful
they've
line,
come.
but I don't think I think that sounds
might
like
have been Sean.
That sounds like a Sean. I wish I could take credit for that, because that's a great line, but I don't think I'm clever enough to come up with that.
Well, one of you said it. It was great moment.
All right, let's dive into our top 5s and take them all one at a time and dive into what makes these 5 films special. Kev, kick us off.
All right, my number 5 is Borat 2. I just think it's just a brilliant look at our country, and where we are as a country politically, where we are as a country as human beings. I think through comedy, he was able to really showcase kind of how similar and different we are. And I think at the end of the day, I think Maria Bakalova deserves an Academy Award for this performance. I think she deserves to win the Oscar. That's how brilliant her performance is. And I think the problem with comedy, as I said it over the years, it's not ever looked at from a good critical eye when it comes to the Oscars. But if you actually pinpoint and watch that film and understand that every scene you're watching is happening in real time, meaning the people there are not actors except for Maria Bakalova and Sacha Baron Cohen, everything is designed, pre-planned. Like, her audition was in a real scene, a real moment. They threw her into a real life situation with Borat, and I don't know what scene it was particularly, but I mean, you have to understand, like, when you look at her in Giuliani's scene or any scene, that she is reacting and acting in the moment. That is they have one chance to get that right, one chance, right? And she never breaks, and I think her performance is literally incredible from a performance perspective. Also, it's like it's just I just love how comedy can really show who we are, and I think a lot of the pre-planning that went into this film. I mean, you think about the fact that she had to get an interview with Giuliani. I mean, she had to build a resume as a reporter. You know what I mean? You think about all the things they have to go into to pitch.
You see that deleted scene where, like, she got into the White House? Yeah,
and that was one of the bits that I saw as well. And, like, one of the cool things, like, for example, he plays a festival at one point. And they have to basically, like, he has to, like, sign up for the festival, I would imagine, as whatever act he's playing. Because remember, Sacha Baron Cohen's playing Borat, playing multiple people.
Which is genius.
Which is incredible. And then that particular concert sequence, he's wearing a bulletproof vest for the first time in his career. Someone pulled a gun on him at one point. I mean, like, he is literally, like, putting his life on the line for his art. And I think it's truly incredible. And I think that Borat 2, people seem disappointed in it compared to 1 because 1 was so shocking, but we're living at a time now where nothing is really shocking anymore. Every single day we're hearing the worst news you could think of on a loop, on repeat. And I think people's sensitivity is different now. I think Borat 1 came out at a time where that was extreme. This is more about the state of our country. That's kind of what I loved about the film. I think it speaks volumes to where we are as a country. And I think that in my opinion, hopefully it helps people. I think it's a very, him living with the QAnon conspiracy for 5 days or whatever, 100% real. Dude literally lived there, and then he would go in his room at night and call back home to his wife, Isla Fisher, and family. And I remember hearing one story that someone knocked on his door one night, and he had to go back into Borat character to tell them that he was fine. And it's like the level of detail that goes into that production is astounding to me. And I think they were able to actually still tell a great story at the same time. So
I've never more, when a movie was over, wanted to see a making of documentary about the production of the movie. I mean, I don't know if we would ever see that because it might take away the magic, but like everything you're just saying, I love that stuff. And I don't always like, I mean, you know me well, I don't always like to sort of peek behind the curtain. Sometimes I just don't want to know how a movie was made, but I would love to see like those kind of moments, But
a lot of people think it's fake. And that's what bothers me, is a lot of people, audiences, they watch it and they go, that's not real, those are actors, etc. I mean, you see the stories about the babysitter and how she was paid very minimally. I mean, it's brilliant. They go up, they say, we're filming a documentary essentially about a foreign language individual who's trying to show his country American culture, and they sign off on it. And even in Borat 2, there's people who have their faces blurred because they didn't sign the document. And I just think it's truly brilliant filmmaking, personally.
I also feel in a year where movies have had a hard time getting traction, some things hit streaming, they peak for a week and then they're gone.
Yeah.
I think Borat 2 did a tremendous job of like permeating the culture and people talk about it. We were watching some program recently where a guy was training animals and he used the clicker to click. And Michelle was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, you remember Borat used that when he brought his daughter in to the babysitter. And he clicked and she sat down. And like, that was a sentence that I used in 2021. And she knew exactly what
That's
I
really
meant.
funny, actually.
And the two of us laughed. For that moment. Because it's just, I thought it permeated the culture.
Yeah.
So, number 5, I am going with Promising Young Woman. Which is just like we've talked about it before. It's I cannot believe that this is Emerald Fennell's first movie, and I mentioned this in the interview with her. I hate that I kind of knew the gimmick. I hate that I knew the fact that she was. Oh, maybe I shouldn't even say it. Maybe I shouldn't say it in case anyone listening to this hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's not out yet.
I would not say it.
Okay, that's fine. But I knew it, and so I wish that I was among those earliest audiences that went into it as clean as possible. So if you haven't yet seen anything about this movie, just go into it. I kind of loved, and I didn't think too much about it until Carey Mulligan said it. She says, I'm always doing period pieces. I liked her in a contemporary role. Mm-hmm. I liked the fact that each of the men that come up in her life over the course of this adventure that she's on are played by, kind of A-list character actors. So that was always kind of surprising and led to the mystique of what was going on. And I did not know where this movie was going. I was wildly shocked by where it ended up. And so the combination of the amazing screenplay, Carey Mulligan's performance, and then Emerald Fennell's phenomenal direction put it at number 5 for me.
My number 5 is a movie I'm fairly certain we're just going to talk about this one time and it's not going to get brought back up. Gabe's nodding. Is The Devil All the Time. A movie that I know I loved way more than you guys, but I don't know if you remember. I loved this movie when it came out. I'm just continuously in awe of how well it balanced so many different storylines, how many plates it's spinning at one time, that I felt each of them were resolved, not necessarily happily, but like everything ended up like they tied up all the loose ends. And I mean, I did my top 10 list on the show yesterday on Fox, and I had a lot of people reach out saying, like, look, I couldn't even get through. Like, that's just a hard movie to watch. And it is. Just when you think the worst possible thing could happen to these people, because it's sort of this multi-generational tale of people that sin, and the idea of should the punishment of those sins be passed down from generation to generation. It's a wide span of time over a very wide cast of characters, and it's hard to watch. Just when you think the absolute worst possible thing could happen, wait 10 minutes because there's going to be something else that's it gets worse, and it doesn't end happy for a lot. It reminded me of the Coen brothers in all the best possible ways. I thought Pattinson was terrific. I thought Tom Holland was terrific. Even like the secondary characters were all great. Bill Skarsgård was incredible in a very small role. But just I loved everything about that movie. And I get when people tell me like that it didn't work for them. I get it, but it absolutely worked for me.
Before we jump to Kevin's number 4, Michelle and I started a movie that, like you say, people couldn't get into or bailed out on. We tried First Cow. Did you guys watch First Cow?
Not yet.
I gotta be honest, man. Like,
you don't.
I know a lot of people love that movie, and it was on a lot of people's top 10 lists.
A lot of them.
But every time, like, I talk to someone that's seen it, every time I ask them, like, okay, what is it about the movie that you liked?
Yeah.
When they explain it, in my head, I think, like, yeah, I'm not going to like that. That's not, it just doesn't. It really does. Now, I could end up watching that movie in like 5 years and be like, Jake, you're a dumbass. Like, that would have been your number 4 of the year, something like that. It just doesn't sound like something that I would want.
Nope. Not in the least bit. We bailed out after 15 minutes. And it was no. We sat. It was one of those awkward things where we sat in silence,
waiting on the other person to say something.
We both just kept watching it, like staring at it, and finally Michelle was just like, "Is this doing anything for you?" And I was like, "No, God, can we move on, please?" Good. So we were free. Kev, number 4 for you.
I went with Mank, which I loved.
Hey, nice.
Fincher. Weirdly a comfort film for me. I just loved being taken back to that era. It's a gorgeously photographed film. I love Reznor and Ross's score. I just think that, I don't know, for me it was I just loved living in that world. I love the mono sound mix. I was really impressed from a technical standpoint. I still think he should have shot it on film, but I found it interesting that he shot digitally and then degraded it by 2/3, and it gave an interesting look. It gave a clarity to the actors' faces, but also a grainy look to the background. So but Fincher doesn't shoot on film, so it's not like something that
is it really because he just can't do as many takes if he
I don't know that I don't know, like, if on Fight Club or Seven or Game, if he was doing 100 200 takes. I don't know that I can't imagine, especially now with how limited film is. But I mean, I don't know, for me, Mank, I thought Gary Oldman was incredible. I found the sound mix to be such a comforting thing. I put it on in the background sometimes and just listen to it. I love the way the dialogue pops. I love the way I just love the sequences. I love every element of the dialogue and the way the actors say the dialogue and the way it was photographed and scored. And to me, it was just, as I sat there and watched, I just felt comforted. It felt like cinema in a weird, strange way. And I know everything we're talking about is cinema, but there's something about that story and the way it's designed and the fact that it's Fincher and who's scoring it and just everything about it. I just fell in love with the world and I wanted to live in the world. So I actually put that movie on a lot just to enter the world again. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous film. So that's my number 4.
Very nice. So at 4, I went with the movie that Jake mentioned late and reminded me that it came out, which is The Kid Detective.
Hey, yes!
And I don't know what, just the list that I was looking at didn't have it, and so this might speak to how hard it's been for people to find it, but this goes very much off of what Kevin is talking about. Like, I thought it created a world that I just wanted to spend more time in, and I love detective films. I've talked about that at length. I grew up on the Encyclopedia Brown books, so it was really strange to see somebody do... The director mentions in our interview, and if you end up checking out Kid Detective, go back and listen to our interview with him and Adam Brody, that he kind of wanted to do an adult Encyclopedia Brown movie, but he just couldn't get the rights or never even thought to get the rights of the name and put it on it, so he just wrote his own story. But the movies that I compare this to are like Rian Johnson's Brick, The Nice Guys that Shane Black did, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which Shane Black did. So and these are movies that, like, years after the fact, people are like, why were these movies like overlooked? Well, this is what happens when people don't see these films when they come out. And Kid Detective creates this truly original and colorful and fascinating world that these really interesting characters are going through. And too many of these films can get lost in the aesthetic of creating that world, but the story in The Kid Detective is really compelling as well too, and it hides some really gut-punching surprises that are coming as the case unfolds. So it puts that character on the shelf with some really classic movie detectives from films like, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, Chinatown or LA Confidential. Like it goes down that kind of rabbit hole while still maintaining the idea of there was this kid who was a brilliant child detective one time, and he's grown up in this town where people have kind of come to hate the fact that he's still around. And Adam Brody is great in it, and it leans heavy into its bizarreness. And I loved it. I loved it. And it's funny. I can say this now. Like, we were offered that film and the director as an interview, and at the time, all of us were just like, I mean, I guess, yeah, sure, we'll take them. And then I'm so glad we did, because I loved the movie and I loved the director, and it's a great reminder that we need to keep an open mind about films, because you never know when you're going to sit down and watch something that just connects with you on a million different levels. So Kid Detective made it all the way up to number 4 for me.
He says 30 seconds after, I'm like, yeah, I didn't really want to watch First Cow.
No, listen, I tried it. I at least tried it.
You did,
so.
yeah. Good
all right, 4 for Jakey.
My number 4 is a movie that we've already talked about pretty extensively, Promising Young Woman. I also agree. I think it's Carey Mulligan's best performance. It might be my favorite performance. Definitely one of my favorite performances of the year. Period. I think that there's a single shot in the opening minutes of the movie that I think kind of perfectly work as a microcosm to represent what this movie is. Which it starts with her walking down the street. Kind of starts like just on her feet, like walking, and on her legs. And you start thinking, and she's like, she has like something like red, liquidy, like deep red dripping down. And you're like, is that blood that's like dripping down from? And it kind of like pans up, and then you realize kind of like, what? Oh, okay, I see what's going on. And I felt like watching the movie, I didn't really know what, I was watching it because I did the junket, and I didn't really know much about it. I didn't, I just kind of pressed play on it one night, and I'm so glad I did. And to your point, Sean, I'm glad you didn't go any further when you were explaining the plot. I didn't know what it was about, and I felt like that. I mean, one, just the discovery of what the movie was about is, in and of itself, like pretty thrilling. And then seeing it go a couple of different directions and kind of lulls you into this false sense of security, only to kind of whip you back around again. And then just the way, just the resolution, the final act, just everything about it, just thought like, it like kicks you in the gut, and like you finally catch your breath, and you think that that's it, and then you get kicked in the gut again. But it waits for you to catch your breath and make you think you're okay. And makes you like, okay, you good, and then kicks you in the gut again.
At some point, I want to have a conversation about the end of the film.
I'd love to.
When we can. Yeah, when we can.
Yeah.
When more people have seen it.
I talked to them about it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to have an in-depth discussion on the show about the end.
Yeah, I'd love to.
When we can. So
I'd love to.
That's a 6.5, and it landed at 6, 5, and 4 on our list.
I have a feeling that's going to make the ReelBlend top 5
consecutively. So
is that our first 3? One? So far, is that our first one so far that's made all of
everybody's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right, top 3. Kevin McCarthy.
My number 3 is The Invisible Man, which I revisited over the weekend, and it's just an incredible achievement. For the budget that film was made, it is just incredible. Leigh Whannell understands the frame of a movie so incredibly well. Every inch of that frame is important. The score, the sound design. I love the brilliant opening credits with the water hitting the rocks, and then the water falling, and then the invisible man popping up. I think that this film really brought me into an interesting world of horror, where while the film seems fantastical, everything I was watching felt believable. I actually believed the science. I understood the science of how he would turn invisible with all the camera lenses all over his body.
Wasn't the original like a potion? Like he drank something? Isn't that
something like that?
They kind of wrote it off like, oh, he drank something. It's fine.
Yeah. And in this case, it was so grounded in reality that it felt like science that we could achieve in 20 years.
Sure.
So that made it really scary, because I'd never really thought about this before, but if you're in your home and someone's there to hurt you and you can't see them, like that is a insanely terrifying concept that I don't think was ever really I really understood as an audience member until I saw this film, from the sense of because I believed the science. I also believed, because the beginning of the film, there's a shot in the beginning of the film which I think is such a brilliant shot that foreshadows the whole film, which is where you're in bed with Elizabeth Moss, and she pulls her covers down, and his hand is just over top of her stomach. And it's an image of power. It's an image of what he has over her. And I think that's the point, is that she escapes, and then he haunts her through the Invisible Man suit. But it is, I found the film to be so brilliant from a technical standpoint, but also an emotional standpoint. I think Aldous Hodge is brilliant in the film. Elizabeth Moss's performance is incredible, deserves an Academy Award nomination. Sound design wise, it is, there's the wonder in the kitchen, which is still to this day, I've had Leigh Whannell explain to me twice in person, once for our podcast and once for our TV interview, and I still don't understand how they did it. She was fighting a guy in a green suit, and it was all in one shot, and it's an unbelievable sequence. That sequence alone put it in my top 10. But the film itself, I just think it's a really, really incredible film emotionally, technically. It also has the most shocking scene I've seen in film in 2020, which was the restaurant scene with her sister. Which I still, every time I watch that scene, it is, I just sit there and I go, and you just see that knife just floating in midair, and then it's just, what a crowd moment, right? Like what a moment where Leigh Whannell was just sitting there, orchestrating this masterpiece, and he was like, here we go. They have no idea what's coming. I mean, the control over the audience, like Whannell understands audience so well. And I think he's a guy that came up like us. He did movie reviews and, things like that. He obviously co-created Saw, but I think Upgrade was a great example of his unique ability to tell stories. But Invisible Man was made for what, 7 or 8 million, and that film has some of the most incredible visual effects I've ever seen. Like it's astounding.
In terms of budget to box office, obviously, there's a huge chunk of this year where it doesn't matter, but like just those first 3 months of 2020, is that the most successful film of the year?
It's got to be up there for sure.
Budget to box office, probably.
Yeah. It's got to be, and that's the Blumhouse model.
Yeah.
One thing I think that really helped Invisible Man too was coming after the Mummy, the Tom Cruise Mummy, which is like the definition of hollow effects and, no real investment in characters and just trying to do action set pieces. Like, you care about Elizabeth Moss's character in Invisible
100%.
Man.
Yeah.
So that's why
weren't they supposed to be setting up Johnny Depp to be wasn't that the whole Dark Universe thing, remember? So. Like, Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
You think about that scene in the attic. I mean, like, everything works because you care about her. Like, the scariest scene in that movie to me is the scene where she is standing there with Storm Reed, the girl from Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time, yeah.
And the Invisible Man slaps Storm Reed in the face. And there's no way for Elizabeth Moss to defend herself to the father when he walks in and goes, and the daughter's like, she just hit me. It's the same thing as the sister sequence with the knife. Like, that to me is so terrifying that you could be blamed for something that horrible and have no way to explain it to anybody. That is such a terrifying concept. Like he puts the knife in her hand after he slits their sister's throat. It's like, my God, like, what do you do? Like, everyone's staring at you. So, anyways.
All right. Number 3 for me is Paul Greengrass's News of the World. And,
great movie.
If you ask me my favorite genres, I don't think I'd get to Western in the top 5 of things I would name. Yet, I wrote next to News of the World movies like Open Range, the Costner's film, Silverado, Lawrence Kasdan's movie from back in the day, Unforgiven, the Coens doing True Grit. When a Western clicks, I love it. I just love it. I love there's something timeless about the Western. I love the pace that News of the World moves at. I love to me, and I wrote this when I was writing my top 10 list, and this wasn't meant to diminish any of the other films. News of the World was the only movie this year that I saw on a smaller screen that I wish I saw on the big screen, because the cinematography demands that you like the way that Darius, whose last name is escaping me, cinematographer who worked with Paul Greengrass, the way that they capture the frontier and the Old West is just phenomenal to me. And there were times in that movie where I got lost in just the production design because they recreated old towns, and each one looked a little bit different that Tom Hanks went to, and each one had their own little unique personality to them, and I got lost in those little bit of worlds. And it's got a great story about him finding this girl and trying to bring this girl back to her people, whether her people are even a thing. I loved what Kevin discussed earlier, which was this concept of someone who brings the news around to towns. And it reminds you that, like, oh, that's the way that we used to operate as a society. What a fantastic way to... And how much... So then in recreating the past, and so many of our movies this year... Whether it be The Five Bloods, One Night in Miami, they restaged Chicago 7. They restaged old events but made connections to contemporary times. And News of the World makes some really prescient points about what kind of trust do we put in our news source. Like when Tom Hanks stands up in these towns to give the news, he's immediately facing some blowback of the people who either don't want to hear it from him or don't trust where he's coming from. And I was like, God, that's still so relevant, like today, where you turn to get your news from.
Yeah, half that audience was Fox News, half that audience was CNN.
100%.
That's exactly, no question.
And even just like his story with the girl, like he's faced with a really difficult journey to take this girl on. And there's a bunch of times where it seems really difficult for him to even hold on to her. And he stays with her because it's the right thing to do. And I was like, oh, that's right. Sometimes compassion for each other has to shine through. And yes, it's difficult to do. And of course, who do you want to tell that story but Tom Hanks? And so a lot of times I think we take him for granted. But when he delivers a 5-star top of the line performance like this, I want to stop it and truly appreciate it because, who knows how many more of performances we'll ever get from Tom Hanks, or how many times he'll line up with a project that's just so rewarding. And so I went into News of the World expecting it to be...
Larry Crown 2.
I expected it to be good. Greengrass makes great movies. Tom Hanks is good. But those two were just on the same page, and man alive.
What do you prefer, Captain Phillips or News of the World?
News of the World, 100%.
Do you?
Yeah, 100%.
Really?
I didn't love Captain Phillips the way everybody else did, although I grant that his performance is really strong in it. But I was way more into the story of News of the World. So it made my top 3.
Damn.
Jakey.
My number 3 is Palm Springs. I feel like the movie, more than any other, that kind of perfectly captured what 2020 was. Just this idea of not even so much like living the same day over and over again, but getting to the point where we all kind of went like, all right, let's try some shit. Like, why not? Like, the fact that we as a society started baking bread together, and the fact that, like, we all started doing, this thing, we started doing that thing, and it's so often when movies do the repeat the same day over and over again trope, people instantly almost knock it, like, oh, it's just knocking off Groundhog Day. But so many filmmakers have taken that just idea and gone so many great different directions with it. You look at Edge of Tomorrow and Happy Death Day. Like, you can take that basic idea and still do really cool, unique things with it without it being a ripoff of Groundhog Day. Yeah. I thought it was incredibly funny. That's probably the movie for me, Sean, that, like, when it was over, I immediately wanted to go back and, like, press play. Again, another movie where I did not know what it was about, and I'm so glad I didn't. And so the moment where he gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow, because it kind of, you're set up to believe like, oh, like I knew it was kind of a Sundance hit. It had been purchased. And so I thought it was just a really fun rom-com of two people that meet at a wedding. And then there's a moment about 10 minutes in where he gets hit in the shoulder with an arrow. And then you just go, what the hell is it? And he runs into a glowing cave. And you're like, what is this movie? What am I watching? Everyone's great. The chemistry's fantastic. Really smart script. And I love that movie to pieces.
Their chemistry is off the charts good.
So insane. Good. Insane.
Yeah, it's so good. And it powers that movie. So, yeah. Kev, 2.
My number 2 is Soul. And I've been saying that for a while. I love Soul. It just meant a lot to me personally. I just think it was... I've just never seen a film visualize mental health like that before. It was just incredible. Score-wise, like that's one of my favorite Reznor scores, Ross scores. It's just
so good.
That movie is insane. It's there's a whole like 2001 sequence where like they're like going like it's really kind of like it's a really a big filmmaking movie from like homages to classic films. And there's like I saw something the other day. I don't know if it was a Jake or somebody sent this, the Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think I think Jamie Foxx was incredible. I just never really. There's a moment in that movie where he walks out of the club at the end, and he after he achieves his dream, and he says, "I don't feel any different." And I was just like that's a lot of people.
Can't you relate to that?
100%.
Like not even something on like his scale, but have you ever had like an interview that you like super wanted or you were super jacked about, and when you get it, like when you like done, like it goes perfectly well and you're happy and you walk out and you go like, okay, all right, well, like that's I guess that's off my list now.
Well, I think the whole point of that was that like we put so much pressure on ourselves to do or be something, and we don't realize that we're already doing being something. Yeah.
You're doing
and it's like I never really thought about it before. The concept of a lost soul, Graham Norton's character, the flipping of the sign, like that's what depression feels like, man. You're just like walking through life. Your mind's not in it. You're not there. You're not present. You are just like a body moving in life. And it's like, that's exactly, I've never seen that visualized like that. So
I'm so glad you told us that before I had a chance to see it. You had mentioned in our text thread about that representation of, and you've talked very openly about, different things that you work through. And I was so glad that you told me that before. And it really made me kind of like, okay, when that scene happened, like really kind of focus on, okay, like this is something that someone that means a lot to me experiences. So like this is helping, it was really like the fact that you mentioned that made me even appreciate those moments a lot more than I think I would have otherwise.
I'm glad you said that, because honestly, like that, it's weird because when you review a film like that, it's such a personal experience that I'm not telling people that like that's what you're going to take from it. But that's what I took from it. And like, it just meant a lot to me from a filmmaking standpoint to see a film do that. It's not a kid's movie at all. It's such an adult film, I think, thematically. I don't know what a 5-6-year-old would take away from that movie.
I've had friends say that they watched it with their grandkid, and after 20 minutes, the kid was just wandering away. Like, he had no interest.
Like, the only thing I could think of is that, like, maybe the body swapping thing with the cat, they might enjoy that, but, like...
You're going to get, like, 40 minutes, 45 minutes into it before that even happens.
Exactly. I don't know if a kid could last long. Because, like, you need to, like, have gone through some shit to, like, really get something out of Soul.
Yeah, you have to have dreams.
Yeah, you need to have had dreams and then lived long enough for some of those dreams to not have worked out.
But also, think about how devastating it is that he was going through his life thinking he was a failure.
Yeah,
I mean that's he thought he was done nothing with his life. He thought he had made no impact whatsoever on anybody.
Right.
Yeah. So it was just a cool arc.
It's my number one, so I'll take some time to weigh in on it as now too, because
what's your number two?
2 is Tenet.
Sorry. I see what you're doing. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Soul is my number one, so I'll just talk about it real fast. I've seen it 3 times. It's honestly, we say this a lot of times, it's a different film every time you watch it. Because the first time I watched it through, I thought it was Joe's story, Jamie Foxx's character, so I was paying attention to his arc. Mm-hmm. And the second time through, I watched it as 22's movie, and it was a completely different film.
Yep.
And because, Kevin, you told us about those moments where she faces all that stuff later, when I watched that the first time through, those scenes hit me of just like, why are we going through this? Like, I don't understand how this connects to Joe, sort of thing. But even that says a lot about her and how, she doesn't think she's part of anyone's journey, sort of thing. But it is. It's largely her story. And the third time through, I just enjoyed the ride completely. Like, it aspires to so many things that Pixar, while we give them a ton of credit, I still feel like Pete Docter was like on another level than anything Pixar's really ever done in this. And the body swap makes me laugh every time. It should be immature and it should be goofy and it should be stupid. But when the two of them are falling down, every time I watch it, I just think Joe's going to land in his body. And when he doesn't, I laugh. I just laugh. I just think it's funny. I think it's dumb, but that really works.
I like that edit when like the doctors come in and you think they're hearing her. They just cut to the sound of the cat, like just making its cat sounds. By the way, can we talk about real fast that barbershop scene? That barbershop scene Like that is the movie right there. Like that monologue that guy gives about like what does he say when he leaves the door? He goes, how come you never told me about this before? He goes, because you never asked.
You never asked. Yeah,
I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's just like what an amazing film.
And there's so many things too, just of like, one of the questions I asked Pete Docter was like, how do you even begin to visualize and animate the afterlife? Like, you have a blank slate because no one can say to you like, well, that's wrong, you know? And I love the forms that they use, and I love how peaceful it is, and everything about Soul works so incredibly well for me that's why it's my number one. So that's where I am with that. And the music, oh my God, the music is incredibly good.
Yeah. Well, you technically skipped your 2, so just might as well give your 2.
Well, wait, Jake, where are you?
Give your number 2 first, and then Sean's number 2 will work into your guys' number 1.
Okay, gotcha.
My number 2 is the Trial of the Chicago 7.
Oh, nice.
I kind of almost put it in the category of a few years ago with The Post, where it's a movie that is made up of my weaknesses. Like The Post was Spielberg, Tom Hanks, journalism is important. Trial of the Chicago 7 is courtroom scenes, Aaron Sorkin dialogue set in Chicago. It is just an incredible accumulation of things that just my knees buckle for that I love. I mean, I think there is nothing better than not just Aaron Sorkin dialogue, but Aaron Sorkin dialogue set within a courtroom. I actually really, think, not to say that someone else couldn't have done it better, but I actually think he did a pretty damn good job with direction. And I think his growth from one film to another between Molly's Game and this is really promising. And like, if he was able to grow that much between, because I wasn't a big fan of Molly's Game, my big complaint being someone else should have taken the script and directed it. But if he got that much better between movies 1 and 2, I can't imagine what 2 and 3 or 2 to 4, 2 to 5 would be like. I live in Chicago. Had always kind of heard about this thing that happened at the DNC, but like didn't really know much of the details of it. And just like so much of that, not that this should matter, but like so much of like especially the exterior scenes were shot like a mile down the road, like places I walk by to go to work every day. And I walk around and I look and I'm just like, God, like this happened, like this happened like literally right here, like at this place. And then to have it be also so unfortunately relevant to things that happened this summer by accident. Like he didn't know. It's not like the Post kind of came out of, I felt like Trump, but this like Chicago 7 didn't come out of George Floyd.
I can't imagine how they watched the current events play out and riots in the streets over police brutality at a time when they had a movie set in 1968 about riots in the streets over police brutality. Yeah. How do you line that up? It's impossible.
Like the protests that were represented in that movie that took place in the late 1960s, protests took place there this summer. Like same place. And with signs, a lot of the signs that read and said the same thing.
That's amazing.
And it is unfortunate how oftentimes we look at movies like that are set at 50 years ago, and short of the technology and like what the cars look like and the hairstyles, you don't have to change that much to slap 2020 or 2021 on there and go, took place today.
So true. I mean, that almost speaks to when Spike had the BLM protests in
100%. And you asked that great question.
I asked him if he would reshot that to include it. He said no, it was always part of the plan.
Yeah.
Because things don't change, unfortunately. Yeah. So my number 2 is your guys' number 1s, I imagine. Time to dive into Christopher Nolan's Tenet. And I'll go first because on the show, I'm not the big Nolan guy. Mm-hmm. Like I generally like his films. I don't love them. I probably prefer his Batman films. Well, that's not accurate because I love The Prestige and I do like Inception a lot. But this was my favorite Nolan for a while. Mm-hmm. I thought it was everything that he can do at its most entertaining. Like obviously his screenplays are challenging and they demand they demand that you pay attention. He's not spoon feeding anything to you. I've had a lot of fun, Kevin. While you say the discourse has been really discouraging for you, I have sort of enjoyed listening to people what their critiques are, because I don't agree with them, but I'm curious to see what they do take away from them, where they say things like it's the only Christopher Nolan film that's not about anything, and I'm like, what did you watch, kind of thing, or like some people who talk about like there's no humor or personality in it at all, and I'm like, did you watch John David Washington? Like that man he's 100% charisma, like all the time. So that's when I read critiques like that, I'm like, well, your mind was made up beforehand. You're not actually commenting on what happens in the film. Your mind is made up. And so, but on this alone, I've never seen action set pieces like this ever. Like, I mean, the backwards car chase and the conclusion with one team going in one direction and one team going the other direction. Like, people just we're not wired to think like that. So this movie,
as much shit as I gave Kevin for like using this phrase over and over again, I have to admit, I think Kevin was right by saying we weren't ready for this movie.
We're still not ready for it.
Nothing drives me more up the wall than having to admit Kevin McCarthy was right, but spot on.
We're still not ready for it.
And
I've seen it 8 times.
This was the first movie that made me buy into Kevin's belief that I'm scared. I'm a little scared of Nolan now, like, because I just, to me, normally he was just like a man. But like now I really don't understand how he thinks, right? And can do this on a repeat basis. So my only fault with Tenet is that I've only seen it one time. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of waiting for Michelle because she wants to watch it again, and I want that to be my second time through. But I know it's going to be so rewarding a second time through, and I can't wait to sort of give it the time and the concert. It's just been really hard with timing and the boys and everything we've been doing over the holidays. But I'm looking forward to seeing it again really soon, and because it connected with me as beautifully as it did, it made it to number 2. Also, I have to just mention, like, that stretch of this year where we were the 4 of us trying to figure out how are we going to see it. Were we going to get Nolan? Then we weren't going to get Nolan. Then he got approved.
Or we're about to get him, and like protests are breaking out in the country, and like rightfully so. Like we were like 20 minutes away from doing it, and it got pushed, and.
That felt to me like the only pocket of normalcy, because it was like the closest to what our lives were, and hopefully will be again sometime soon. So that was a rush, and I will always love that movie for giving us that. So, Jake, let's go to you to give Kevin.
I was going to ask if I could go next because one, even though it's my number 1 and Kevin's number 1, it's Kevin's number 1 to an infinite degree, and I want to give credit to Kevin for, in a way, inspiring me to be open to the idea of how this movie could change over time. Because I like, we all had a really great, 2-hour-long conversation after the night that we all saw it, before all the discourse started, where we were just really geeked out. At that time, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And I was kind of chalking it up to like, it's going to be a solid like number 4, number 5 on my top 10 list by the end of the year. But something that always hung over me is like, really, now that I get it, now that I understand it ish, I want to go back and watch it again. And we didn't really have like our normal, for lack of a better word, like movie going experience this year, like traditionally speaking. So for me, I've now seen it 5 times. The watching and rewatching, the assembly, deassembly, reverse engineering of the plot, the almost treating it like, yesterday on air I compared it to a 1,000-piece puzzle. You would never expect yourself to put that together in one sitting. You're working on it for a while, then you go off, you come back, you kind of and then slowly you kind of start seeing what the picture is. But if you get mad that you only put 100 pieces together and can't tell what it is and then walk away, well, that's not on you because the puzzle's not over. And having now seen it 5 times, I'd say I have a pretty damn good understanding of it. I'm still picking up fun little like things that were there all along. Someone said something that blew my mind yesterday. I know we talked a lot about the like, is Elizabeth Debicki's son Robert Pattinson theory. Someone brought up a theory to me yesterday which blew my mind, which is the young scientist who introduces him to the gun, like the bullets in the wall, is she the Oppenheimer that is she the one that grows up to become the Oppenheimer down the road that kills herself and goes back in the...
I think that's either her or it's related to her.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before, and that like blew my mind that she's the one that ends up like because she has an understanding of like how badly shit goes. Anyway, It's a movie that I love more and more and more every time I see it, and I don't think I would have been as open to the idea of revisiting it or the possibility of it being the same movie but changing, or me changing as I watch it, had it not been for Kevin's deep, passionate love. Full disclosure, Kevin knew that this was my number one just because I kind of had to like admit. I texted him just like admitting, like, dude, like, gotta be honest with you, man, like, wasn't gonna put this as my number one. Spent 4 weeks like I did something which Kevin does all the time and I don't do. This is not a thing I do, which is like woke up one morning on a Saturday, was drinking coffee and just casually went like, I'm gonna put on the last 30 minutes of Tenet and just press play and watch like the battle scene. That's not a thing I do, but I found myself wanting to do it and like sitting there watching and going, oh, okay, I get it. Like, it's editing here. Like, this quick edit is blue, this quick edit is red. Like, oh, I get it now. And it's not Nolan's fault that we didn't get it the first time through, you know. And if
how does he get it? How does he get it?
Well, like, I think I read a quote from him where he said he has to keep in mind, like, he was like, I this is something that I've been thinking about for years. So like, of course, I'm that much further ahead than everyone else is. So you know, I hope over time people come around and can admit not their shortcomings as an audience member, but admit that like sometimes movies do take, and if someone says I shouldn't need more than one time, I go, cool, okay, sure, that's fine, but you're robbing yourself of something great. And it is far and away my number one favorite film of the year.
Kev?
Yeah. I mean, Jake, I appreciate everything you said, because I agree with everything you said. It is, it's hard to put into words how much I love this film. One of my favorite things to do during the pandemic specifically has been if any family members come over or anyone comes over safely, obviously, I like to hold court and show and I literally do a Nolan presentation for anybody who comes over to my house. And it's a 4K presentation with IMAX sequences. And this past weekend, my Lauren's stepfather, came over and mother came over. And I got to hold court and explain and show Tenet to him. And one of the cool things about it was he had absolutely no idea what IMAX cameras were, aspect ratios were, the fact that like Nolan does pretty much everything in camera. He was astounded that like of what he was experiencing, because the majority of people who watch Tenet now are going to either get it on iTunes or whatever, and they're not going to get the full aspect ratio shifts with the IMAX. Tenet is like I equate it to the greatest roller coaster I've ever ridden. And I say that because emotionally I'm with it, but the ramp up to every single action scene feels like you're going up the hill of a coaster. And if you listen to the music as he orchestrates the sequences, as we ramp up to the plane scene or ramp up to the highway scene or ramp up to whatever scene we're going into, he's building you up musically prior to all these moments. Like, there's a great beat, an edit beat where the airplane sequence is about to happen, and it's like this bass note as they're going through security at Freeport, and he's just building you up like continuously till you get to that dun 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 dun, and as the plane comes into the shot, and it's like it's all so orchestrated and calculated, and it's all in his head. And you think about the fact that John David Washington had to learn that fight 4 times, forward and backwards as the protagonist and backwards and forwards as the antagonist, right? And so you're talking about 4 different. I don't know if he's technically an antagonist in that scene. But
I was just about to ask you. He's not playing the guy in.
It's.
Like
no, there's a stunt guy in that aspect,
yeah,
but John David learned how to fight all 4 ways.
Damn.
So like, I mean, if you think about like the concept of that, like first of all, you're speaking backwards. People are, I mean, it just is incredible. Now, all that confusion aside, it's an incredible story.
It's a great story.
It's a great story. I love his need to protect Elizabeth Debicki. I find I engage in that. I also engage in her release from that terrible domestic abuse situation that she was in. And just that journey, that arc that she has to go on, and that whole diving off the boat, coming back around to the end. I mean, it just truly is astounding filmmaking. And I've been saying this for months and months and months. I'm probably sound like a broken record, but I just genuinely love the film. It is something that amps me up. It reminds me why I love cinema. Every time I put it on, if I'm having like a down day and I'm like, what am I doing? You know, blah, 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 you know, and then I'll throw Tenet on and I genuinely feel like I feel reborn in a weird way, in the sense of like my passion comes back immediately. Because you go into dark spaces sometimes with depression and things like that. And I just find when I throw Tenet on, it can pull me out of any negative space that I'm in. And I just feel like this is pure filmmaking. Nobody is pushing cinema ahead like Christopher Nolan. Nobody is, like, he has set the bar so high for practical action sequences that I don't understand how any filmmaker looks at that and goes, well, I gotta be like that. I gotta be better. I gotta use less CGI. I have to do as much as I can in camera. I have to make this as realistic as possible. And like when you're watching him fight himself backwards, right? The long takes of action, those guys are holding massive IMAX cameras and they're getting in there intimately in gigantic frames of action. It is just, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, Tenet is it's just so far beyond any filmmaking I've ever seen. And I feel like I'm lucky to be alive to experience this director. This is
and we got to talk to him.
Yeah, but it's like,
Briefly.
it's like, I feel like decades from now, like I would look, you know, I look back at the 60s and 70s and 50s and 40s, whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, I would love to have been alive to experience Hitchcock's work, or Orson Welles, or Kubrick when he was at his peak, right? If I could have experienced them in the time frame, we get to have one of those guys in our lifetime. And I think, you know, I'm not saying he's better than Steven Spielberg. Spielberg has obviously a greater filmography and a better storytelling,
or
arc.
Darren Aronofsky even.
Right. But I mean, we should consider ourselves lucky that we're living in a time period that a filmmaker like this is working to his full potential, and he's using technology and filmmaking like I've never seen before. No feature filmmaker has ever used that type of camera before Dark Knight to tell narrative storytelling in feature films. It was unbelievable. So
how great was Patty Jenkins when we were interviewing her, and she's like, I talk to Chris about IMAX cameras all the time. We're just like blown away. Yeah. I talk to Chris all the time. Chris.
I could never call him Chris.
Chris.
I couldn't call him Chris.
I wish
you call him Chrissy, right?
Chrissy. I wish I had like stuck with Jacob
Nolan.
Hamilton. So like you could tell, you know how like when you can tell someone's friends with Robert De Niro, they're like, oh yeah, I was talking to Bob the other day, or like Marty Scorsese. I wish I'd stuck like with like Jacob Hamilton so that you could tell who my friends were based on who called me Jake.
You're not a Jacob though. It's just you're not.
You just got on the Jacob list.
Okay, what is the ReelBlend collective top 5?
All right, I'll briefly go through these before we move on. So basically, to explain the quote-unquote rules, don't take this seriously at all. I'm sure there are better ways to weight this.
No, I think you described it to me
kept it
before the
simple.
show, and it sounds perfectly fair.
Very straightforward. So basically, everything got a score on your guys' list, on the guys' list. So if you gave it a 10, it got 1 point. If you gave it number 1, it got 10 points. Fill everything else in between. Pretty straightforward. So we'll call this the top 5 of the podcast of the year. And number 5, I think, is maybe the most interesting. Number 5 is The Kid Detective.
Yeah.
Hey!
I'm okay with that.
Awesome.
I like
That excites
movie.
me.
It's a great movie. Number 4, Trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay.
Number 3, Promising Young Woman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Soul. And then number 1, Tenet.
Okay.
I ain't mad about it. That's a damn good top 5.
Tenet nearly with a perfect score, 29 points out of a possible 30. Fantastic.
Deserve it.
Damn.
Absolutely.
Gabe, I know you hate
Oh, you're gonna
the
ask
feet
me
to
this
the
question.
fire, but if you just had to be like, I mean, what was your favorite movie? And I feel like favorite's easier than best. Like, what was the one?
A movie that I've only seen one time, and then I saw about half of it when I was showing it to my mother and stepfather, that I'm excited to see again. I'm like super pumped to see it again, and just for some reason, I just can't wait to go back to it. Is Mank.
I figured that was going to be your
It's such
your
a
movie.
terrible, awful, gritty, romantic time of an industry that I love, that I just love going back. And the fact that it's told within stories of that time, like stories of that time were told, I should say. There's something about that just hits me, and this year in particular, 2020 in particular, where I just needed to be lifted away, and just like I said, in this romantic other world.
So good.
Yeah, Mank comes to mind. Tenet's also up there. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So those are our top 10 lists collectively and individually. If you guys want to share your top 10 list with us, send them to ReelBlend@cinemablend.com. Briefly, I'm going to get to this week in movies. It still feels like we're in a kind of a limbo where, big things aren't opening yet, but it also feels like big things aren't coming to streaming just yet because Amazon Prime Video has a film called Herself, which is coming out on January 8th. And then Netflix is bringing Pieces of a Woman, a film that we expect to be talking about as we get through the awards season heavily, primarily because I just saw today that Vanessa Kirby is the frontrunner in the Best Actress conversation right now.
I wouldn't be mad if she won.
The opening 30 minutes of that film,
I
haven't seen anything that intense since Saving Private Ryan. Like that immersive. And
it's
you're talking
going to be very triggering for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and the only reason the Saving Private Ryan comparison is made is because they're both experiences that one, obviously, I'll never be on the beaches of Normandy or World War II, and two, I will never give birth, clearly. So there are two situations of sequences that I will never experience in my own life that I felt like I was there for them, in the sense that, and I will never know what it's like to give birth. I'm not saying that I know that. I just felt like I understood it better by seeing the film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So that's coming to Netflix starting on January 7th. And again, it's probably something you want to check out if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the awards race. So this week's BlendGame is dedicated to the co-star of Wonder Woman 1984, the beautiful and glamorous Chris Pine. Y'all thought I was going in a different direction.
That's a beautiful man.
Oh my God. No, so he's literally one of the dudes who I've done junkets with him before, and every time you sit across from him, he's ridiculously handsome, and you just want to say, like, go to hell, you son of a bitch. Like, how on earth are you allowed to...
you kind of want him to be a little bit of an asshole to at least, balance out you. So that way you could be like, well, yeah, he's good looking, but he's a jerk. But he's also very nice in person.
I've never had... just the nicest guy, the nicest dude who gives really great interviews. And so let's celebrate the beauty of Chris Pine. This is one of those instances Gabe has told me where if I count 3, 2, 1, we will all give our answer, and it will be the exact same one. So let's do that. 3, 2, 1.
Star
Trek. Yes. So I'm going to give what my alternative would have been real fast, and then we can dive into how beautiful J.J. Abrams...
Hell or High Water?
No, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which people don't remember.
I always forget that he's in that.
That's the one I thought you were going to pick.
In fact, when you tweeted the other day, Chris Pine is my Spider-Man, and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Is he drunk?
And it's such a stupid reference because he's literally only in it for 5 minutes total.
So how is he your Spider-Man then?
Because it's the cadence and the delivery of the humor that he gets that I can tell you when I read Spider-Man comics, it sounds like that. He gets some really great quips over the course of that the sequences that he has, whether it's the very beginning with the opening montage, even just where he's just like, I was a comic book, I did a Christmas movie, I even got a so-so popsicle. It's all about delivery.
He's great.
There's jokes in the middle of that fight where he's like, Goblin, I can't have you open up this hole over Brooklyn. He's like, Staten Island, maybe, but it's just, and listen, they're written for him, but he dials into that humor so well. And so I love him as that. But obviously his take on Captain Kirk and just the revision, I don't love Star Trek. I don't love it. But I love that Kelvin series. I think those the 3 films, I think all 3 of them are fantastic. I know true Trekkies call them Star Wars by way of Star Trek kind of thing, because it felt like JJ wanted to make a Star Wars film, but I don't care. They work really well, and he is phenomenal, and I think that he had a really difficult task of trying to play a new version of Captain Kirk and just, nailed it. And I thought the way he played off of Zachary Quinto is fantastic. I think Quinto does a great Spock. Pine said to me in our Wonder Woman 1984 film that he thinks he's modeling every hero he plays on screen after Indiana Jones and after Harrison Ford's approach to the action hero of just like, I don't really want to be here, but I have to be here, and he's human, and he's fallible, and all these things that I find fascinating, and it works so well in Captain Kirk, and so that's why I would go with Star Trek as well. Kevin, why do you love Chris Pine as Captain Kirk?
Well, I just think that 2009's Trek was such an accessible film for non-Star Trek fans. Like, kind of like what you were saying. I particularly found, like, it's interesting. Like, my favorite Star Trek film before that was Wrath of Khan, which I also think was another accessible Star Trek film. I don't love the series. I just think that what Abrams brought to it, I also am a huge fan of Abrams's lens flares. So I just found like the gorgeous cinematography that Dan Mindel did in the ship with just like, I remember hearing stories that like, I know this is a J.J. Abrams comment more than a Pine comment, but I remember him having like flashlights to get like the lens flares. But back to Pine for a second. My favorite scene in that whole film, aside from the Hemsworth Giacchino sequence, which is just brilliant, is the scene when his hands blow up. And his hands, and I just love that whole comic relief. That whole sequence. Isn't Carl Urban a part of that scene too? It's like a really fun sequence, and I just found I just love Pine as that character. He kind of found a way to be an asshole, but charming.
He's not afraid to make himself the idiot in the scene. You know, but some guys are like, oh, I won't play that. Chris Pine plays that happily. He has a very good way of finding tone with characters, and like there's something about his Kirk that I just really enjoyed. I found him to be a fun character, and I understood his flaws. I understood what happened to him at a younger age. I understood why that impacted him. Like anytime he's an asshole in any of the scenes in the show or in the movie, you understand where he's coming from based on the life that he had. And I'm not excusing it, but he played it in a way where it made it, the character was fun to play with. Like it was a fun arc. It was fun to watch him on screen. Him and Quinto were incredible. That's definitely my favorite Pine film. Jakey, how'd you want it there?
Same thing. He had to be a lot of cliche things without making them look cliche. He had to kind of be, the douchebag with the heart of gold, and which, we've seen 1,000 times before, but the way he does it also makes it seem really fresh. He had to be sort of the reluctant hero, which, he was modeling after, perhaps the greatest reluctant hero, which is, Indy, but had to do it while making it seem fresh. So like I feel like given this, not that the material was cliche, because it was very well written, his Kirk was, but like very familiar tropes to touch on to make the character work. But in order to make the character work as well as it did, he had to take those cliche and familiar tropes and present them in such a way that felt fresh and unique to him as an actor, and unique to a character that we were so familiar with seeing someone else play before. So I felt, so he was really handed a really impossible task and made it look easy. And as much as I wanted to pick something other than this, I couldn't justify it.
Well, Star Trek was also chosen by John Palmer, Michael Breen, and Michelle Garrist. Robert Hillier, Haley, and Alex Watson went with Hell or High Water. James Vasquez chose the original Wonder Woman. Rachel K.H., Adam Pascia said Into the Woods, and Saskia, Felicity, and many others went with Princess Diaries 2, The Royal Engagement. So, thank you very much, everybody, for participating.
Or actually,
I don't know. You'll have
Hell
to
or
ask
High
them.
Water is an excellent movie, by the way.
Hell or High Water has one of the most brilliant plot turns in my entire life, which is the way that they launder their money.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, they rob banks, they bring them to a casino across state lines, they get chips in return, and then Chris Pine sits at a bar and watches a baseball game, then brings the chips back and gets different money. And when I saw that on screen in that movie, I thought, that is the most brilliant idea I've ever seen.
Isn't there like a part of you that's like, I could do that?
Yeah, dude,
I could sit at a bar.
I used to watch the Ocean's 11 film and wonder, like, are they giving away how someone could rob the Bellagio? Like, they're giving it away. This
Yeah,
is...
but the thing about the Ocean's films is that there's there's two requirements in order to be able to pull all that off. One, you have to be very good looking, and the second one is
check.
like we forget. Yeah, check, done. We forget that like they have to. One of the big plot points at the beginning of the film is they have to go to a guy who is a millionaire.
Sure.
Because like you gotta have it's the only way that the Ocean movies work.
But they
is
show
if you have
you.
a guy.
Like the details, the guarding of, and again, going back to what you were saying about Hell or High Water, I always wonder, like when, like every time I watch a movie about someone like overtaking like the White House or something like that, I'm like, are they worried about people like Olympus has fallen? Can this really happen? I'm a little worried.
I would go as far as saying, is it like they have it down to so that if like someone could get into the White House based on watching a Roland Emmerich film, then they've got bigger problems.
Wait, Emmerich didn't do...
Emmerich did White House Down.
That was Antoine Fuqua.
Yeah.
But Olympus Has Fallen is a great movie, by the way.
Yeah, I like the first one.
That's an awesome... That's Die Hard in the White House, but it's great. I rewatched Die Hard recently, and it is a masterpiece, by the way.
Yes, of course it is. All right, next week we're going to be playing hashtag Christopher Walken Blend.
Yes! Good one!
Reach out on Twitter.
The original Hollywood Chris.
Using
a hard one.
Gabe. Nice, Gabe.
Damn.
Hashtag Christopher Walken Blend on social media, or you can send us your pics via email at realblend@cinemablend.com.
Well, you see, he had a watch.
Well, that was actually pretty good, Jake. Nice job. You can also send us reviews at realblend@cinemablend.com, and that's where Robert Hillier sent his review for this week, where he says, I'm a big movie fan, and I range from seeing every Best Picture nominee to every superhero and Star Wars movie available, while also being a big Adam Sandler fan. Hubie Halloween for Best Picture. So this show is perfect for me. I love being able to talk movies in a non-cynical way, but just talk and enjoy something that is so much fun with the perfect amount of playful banter. I first heard of the show around a year ago, and my first episode was the 100th episode with a live audience. So RIP to the live audience experience, because there was literally it was yesterday. It was a year ago yesterday from the day that we were recording. And I miss people so much, and I miss being able to do events like that, and that was such a fun experience. And so if you're listening to us and you're relatively new, go back and find the 100th episode live in Washington, D.C. It was tremendous. I digress. Robert goes on to say, as soon as I heard the joke let off some steam Tenet, I knew this was the perfect movie podcast.
That was amazing.
It helps to get all of my
Who was that?
news.
That wasn't me.
It was someone in the audience.
I was setting it up on the show, and then someone said Tenet out loud. Like it was like I was getting ready to say let off some steam, and someone said Tenet or something like that. Yeah.
It worked out really well. It helps to get all of my movie news while also breaking down the movies that I love. I'm not on Twitter, so I wasn't able to chime in on the poll, but I always mix my chocolate and popcorn. If you've never tried Bunch of Crunch and popcorn, you're really missing out. Get a handful of popcorn and pour some chocolate on it, and it just makes the movie better. Thanks for giving me something to look forward to in my commutes every Thursday. Robert, thank you so much for weighing in on the show and for your snack recommendations. On our next premium episode, we are going to discuss if there is such a thing as a bad movie. Can a movie actually be bad, or does it really just miss its intention? So if you're a premium listener, feel free to dive into that conversation with us shortly. And if you would like to learn more about the premium subscription, we have that information in the description that's associated with the podcast. So in the meantime, we'll be back with a new full-length episode. Until that happens, you can follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy, at Sean_O'Connell, and at ReelBlend. Talk to you guys next week. Happy New Year. See you soon.
Hubie.